The morning sky above Kensington Palace was quiet and gray. A soft wind moved the leaves in the royal garden. The palace gates were lined with people. Some stood in silence. Others quietly cried. Many held flowers, pictures, and handwritten notes. The air felt heavy. The whole country seemed to be mourning. Inside the palace, Prince William sat by the window, looking out at the crowd. His eyes were tired. His face was pale. His mind was full of memories. His heart was heavy with grief. A beloved family member had passed away, someone close, someone important. The pain he felt was deep and personal. Catherine, Princess of Wales, walked into the room holding a small black coat. "William," she said softly, "it's time." He turned to her, nodding quietly. No words were needed. Their eyes met, and they shared a silent understanding. They were not just royals today. They were a husband and wife saying goodbye. They were parents explaining loss to their children. They were two people standing in grief side by side. The children stood nearby, dressed in formal clothes. George looked down at his shoes. Charlotte clutched her mother's hand. Louis, the youngest, stayed close to his father. The family didn't say much that morning. Their silence spoke more than words ever could. As the family prepared to leave for the memorial, Catherine gently knelt beside the children. She spoke in a soft voice. "We are going to say goodbye today," she said, her voice steady. "It's okay to feel sad. It's okay to cry. We will do this together." William watched his wife with quiet admiration. Even in sorrow, she stayed calm and kind. She guided the children with care. Her strength came not from hiding her emotions, but from showing them with honesty and love. They left the palace in silence. As the car drove slowly through the city, people bowed their heads. Some waved small flags. Others simply stood, offering their quiet support. The roads were lined with faces, some young, some old, but all full of emotion. At the royal chapel, the service began. The music was soft and slow. The choir's voices floated gently through the air. Catherine and William walked together into the room hand in hand. Behind them, their children followed closely, their small steps careful and unsure. Inside, the air was still. Family members, close friends, and royal staff filled the rows. No cameras were allowed inside. This moment was for family, for love, for loss. William stood first. He walked slowly to the front, holding a small piece of paper. As he looked at the words, his hands trembled. He took a deep breath. "He taught me courage," he began, "and he taught us kindness. He was more than just family. He was our compass, our strength." He paused. His voice shook. The room was quiet, waiting. "He always reminded us that love is stronger than duty," William continued, his voice soft but full of feeling. "Today we honor him, and tomorrow we carry his lessons with us." Catherine stood next. She held no paper. Her hands were folded gently in front of her. "He was patient and gentle," she said. "He always smiled when the children came, running. He listened without judging. He gave us time we will always cherish." Her voice broke slightly. She closed her eyes, then opened them again. "We were lucky to have him, and we will love him always." After the speeches, the family moved to the palace garden for a small private service. It was quiet and beautiful. Flowers bloomed all around. A gentle breeze moved the petals. Music played softly, songs chosen because they meant something. Special William and Catherine stood side by side. They held hands. Sometimes they smiled softly as others shared stories. Other times they wiped away quiet tears. The children sat nearby, their faces thoughtful and still. Catherine moved through the garden with care. She checked on the elderly relatives, made sure the children were warm, and offered hugs where they were needed. Her eyes were red, but her voice was gentle. She didn't speak much, but when she did, her words gave comfort. William, too, let his guard down. He sat with his cousins, shared stories with his father, and took time to thank the staff who had helped with the ceremony. His usual royal formality had softened. He was simply a son, a husband, a father, trying to hold his family together. The afternoon passed. Laughter began to mix with tears. Someone told a funny memory, and for a moment the garden was filled with warm smiles. The children began to play quietly near the flowers. Their laughter, light and soft, brought comfort. To everyone it was a strange kind of day, full of sadness but also full of love. Later that evening, as the family returned home, the car was silent. The children leaned against their parents, tired from the day. Catherine placed a blanket over Louis and whispered gently to Charlotte. William looked out at the fading sun. The day had taken so much out of him. But beside him, Catherine still sat strong, and in the back seat their children were safe. He reached for her hand. She squeezed it. They had made it through the day, not alone, but together. And in the days ahead, they would keep walking through their grief, side by side, as they always had, as they always would. The next morning, the palace was quiet. Even the birds in the garden seemed to sing more softly. The servants moved gently through the halls, their eyes lowered, their steps careful. It was the day after the farewell. But for William and Catherine, grief had not ended. It had only changed shape. In the children's room, Catherine carefully helped Charlotte brush her hair. Louis played quietly with a small wooden toy. George sat on the bed, staring out the window. He looked older somehow, like he had seen something. He didn't fully understand but would never forget. Catherine kissed the top of his head. "It's all right to feel a little sad today," she said softly. "We all do." Down the hall, William stood at his desk, holding a letter that had arrived that morning. It was from someone unknown, just a member of the public. But the words were full of kindness. "Your grace during this difficult time gave us courage. Thank you for showing us how to mourn with love." William read the note twice, then folded it and placed it gently inside a drawer filled with other letters, each one a reminder that their grief was shared across the world. After breakfast, the family gathered again in the royal garden, the same garden where, the day before, they had held the private farewell. The flowers were still fresh, the chairs still arranged in soft circles, but the air today felt different, less formal, more peaceful. Only close family and dear friends were invited back. No press, no speeches, just people who had loved the same person, coming together to remember quietly. Catherine wore a soft gray dress and a small silver locket around her neck. Inside it was a tiny photo, one she had placed there that morning. It made her feel close. William walked beside her, holding her hand firmly. His eyes were tired, but focused. They sat on a bench under a willow tree where the leaves moved like slow waves in the breeze. Around them, gentle music played from a string quartet, musicians chosen by the family, because the lost loved one had once said those songs brought peace to the soul. William and Catherine took turns reading out letters that couldn't be delivered, in person. These were messages from people across the globe, friends, relatives, even strangers. Some were short, others were long, but all were written with love. Catherine's voice shook as she read one note from an old family friend. "Remember the way he laughed at the dinner table, even during the hardest times. He gave me hope." Her voice broke. She paused, breathed, then continued. "He reminded us all that kindness is the real strength." William placed a hand on her back. She nodded slowly and gave a small, grateful smile. Later, the children ran quietly between the garden paths. They weren't loud, but their gentle laughter brought warmth to the gathering. They stopped to pick small flowers and placed them near the framed photo set on a white table. It was their way of saying goodbye. The adults watched them. Some smiled, through their tears. Others simply looked down, letting their emotions wash over them. Catherine made sure to check on everyone. She brought a blanket for an elderly aunt who felt cold. She poured tea for a cousin who had traveled far. She sat and listened as people spoke about memories, both joyful and painful. Her face was soft. Her voice was calm. Even in her own sorrow, she cared for others. William, too, took time with each guest. He helped serve food. He made sure the older children were included. He took his younger brother aside for a quiet talk, his hand resting gently on his shoulder. "I know," he said, quietly. "I feel it too." Their grief didn't divide the family. It brought them closer. As the afternoon sun began to lower, someone suggested one final gesture. The family and friends stood in a circle in the center of the garden. They held hands. No one spoke at first. Then Catherine whispered a small prayer. It was simple, honest, for peace, for healing, for love that never ends. The prayer ended, and a deep silence followed. Then one by one the circle broke as people hugged each other, offering quiet comfort. William looked at Catherine. "You were wonderful today," he said softly. She shook her head. "We did this together." Later that evening, the family returned to the main house. The children were tired but peaceful. George asked a few questions about the day. Charlotte drew a small heart in her notebook. Louis fell asleep as soon as his head hit the pillow. William changed out of his formal clothes and joined Catherine in their private sitting room. The lights were low. A few candles flickered gently. Catherine held a cup of tea in her hands, her fingers slightly shaking. William sat beside her. They didn't speak right away. They didn't need to. They had given so much of themselves these 2 days. Now they could rest. They looked around the room. Photos of happy memories surrounded them. The soft ticking of the clock marked the passing of time. The world outside was still watching. But here, in this small, quiet space, they could breathe. Catherine leaned her head on William's shoulder. "Will it ever feel normal again?" she asked. "I don't know," William said, "but we'll find a way, together." And in that moment, surrounded by silence, sorrow, and love, they found a small piece of peace. They knew the road ahead would not be easy, but they also knew they were not walking it alone. Night had fallen over Kensington Palace. The windows glowed softly with warm yellow light, but inside the air was still heavy with sorrow. The grand rooms that once echoed with laughter now felt quiet and full of memory. It was the third day, after the farewell, and the weight of grief still sat quietly on everyone's shoulders. William walked slowly through the hallway, holding a small photo in his hand. It was old, a little faded at the corners. A picture of him as a boy, smiling beside the loved one they had just said goodbye to. His fingers traced the edge of the photo as if touching the past might bring a little comfort. In another room, Catherine sat by the fireplace. She was not wearing her usual formal clothes. Tonight she wore a soft sweater and her hair was tied back simply. Her eyes were tired, red from tears. But still, she looked peaceful. The kind of peace that comes after crying, after letting emotions flow without hiding. The children had gone to bed earlier. William had read them their bedtime stories while Catherine helped them change into pajamas. Little Louis had asked softly, "Is he in the sky now, Mummy?" Catherine had hugged him gently and whispered, "Yes, sweetheart, he's watching over us." Now the house was quiet. Just William and Catherine remained awake, sitting in the soft glow of the firelight. They didn't speak for a long time. Their silence was not empty. It was full of understanding. "I didn't expect it to hurt like this," William finally said. Catherine nodded slowly. "Neither did I." She reached out and held his hand. His fingers closed around hers, and in that small touch they both found strength. They had shown the world their grace. They had led the family through public farewells. But here, alone in their sitting room, they could be honest. They could be two hearts breaking quietly, without needing to hold back. William stood and walked to a shelf, pulling out a box of old letters. They were notes, cards, and birthday messages from the one they had lost. Together they sat and read them slowly, one by one. Some made them smile. Others made tears fall again. One note had a line that read, Don't forget to take care of each other when I'm gone. Catherine placed her hand over her mouth. William closed his eyes. The room felt both full and empty, full of memories, empty of the voice they longed to hear one more time. Later that night, Catherine moved to the kitchen and quietly made tea. She placed 2 cups on a tray and brought them back to the room. William took his cup, but didn't drink right away. He looked into the steam as if searching for answers in the rising warmth. "We did everything right, didn't we?" he asked. Catherine looked at him gently. "Yes. We gave them a proper goodbye. We honored their life. And now we must honor our own feelings too." The couple sat together and slowly drank their tea. In the quiet, they remembered the little things, the way their loved one used to laugh, the special nicknames, the jokes shared only within the family. Catherine got up and pulled a blanket from the couch. She placed it over William's shoulders, before sitting beside him again. "You were brave today," William said. "You were too," she replied. "No," he said, shaking his head softly. "You held everyone. You cared for everyone, even when you were hurting." Catherine's eyes filled with tears again. She looked down. "I didn't want to fall apart in front of the children." "You didn't fall apart," William said. "You carried us all." She leaned into his shoulder. He kissed the top of her head. They stayed that way for a long time. Later they moved to their bedroom. The night was deep now. The city outside was sleeping. The palace lights were dim. Catherine stood by the window looking out at the garden where they had held the private memorial. "I want to plant something there," she whispered. "A tree, something that grows." William joined her. "Yes, a tree for remembrance, one that the children can sit under one day and remember." They crawled into bed, their movements slow, their bodies heavy with emotion, but as they pulled the covers over them, they felt the warmth of being together. Before sleeping, William reached over to the nightstand and picked up another letter from the drawer. It was from a schoolchild. "Dear Prince William and Princessy, Catherine, I'm sorry you are sad. When I am sad, my mum gives me a hug. I hope someone hugs you too." Catherine smiled through her tears. "That's beautiful," she said. William reached out and wrapped his arms around her. "Let's take turns hugging each other," he said gently. "Even when the world is watching, even when it's not." The room fell quiet again. But this time, it was the quiet of comfort, not pain. As they drifted to sleep, the grief remained, but now it was wrapped in love, and that love would carry them through the days ahead. The morning light touched the walls of Kensington Palace gently. It was a new day, but the sorrow still remained in quiet corners of the home. The pain of loss had not vanished, but it had softened. The storm had passed. Now came the gentle work of healing. Prince William stood near the bedroom window. The sky was clear and the garden below looked calm. Birds moved through the trees and a gardener carefully trimmed a bush near the bench where family had once gathered. That same garden, once filled with tears, now held peace. Catherine was already awake. She moved quietly through the nursery, checking on the children. George was dressing himself. Charlotte was folding a small letter she had written. Louis, still sleepy, reached up for a cuddle. She kissed his head and held him for a moment longer than usual. "Are you okay, Mummy?" he asked, resting his head on her shoulder. Catherine smiled gently. "Yes, my love. Just thinking about someone we miss." Breakfast was quiet but warm. The children asked questions about their loved one, nothing too heavy, just little things they remembered. William answered with patience. Catherine added sweet memories. They laughed softly at a funny story George shared. It felt good to smile, again, even through the sadness. After breakfast, the couple met in their private office. A table was covered with letters, drawings, and messages from across the world. Some were from presidents and leaders. Others came from children, schools, and everyday people who had lost someone too. Catherine opened one note from a young girl. It read, "When my granny died, I planted flowers in her favorite color. Now every time I see them bloom, I remember her. Catherine looked at William. That's what I want to do. Let's create something that lives on. For them. William nodded. A living memory. For the public. And for the children. That same afternoon, the couple walked once more through the royal garden. They stopped at the exact place where the memorial service had taken place. The bench still sat under the old tree. The wind moved gently through the leaves. We'll plant it here, Catherine said, her voice soft but sure. A tree. Strong. Deep roots. William agreed. And a garden around it, with flowers in all their favorite colors. A space where others can come, grieve, reflect, heal. They spoke to the royal staff and the planning team. They wanted the garden to be open to the public, a place of remembrance and comfort. They requested benches, soft music paths, and areas where children could leave drawings or flowers. Soon the idea grew into something bigger, a memorial garden dedicated to love, memory, and healing. Catherine worked closely with designers, choosing colors and shapes with care. William arranged support from charities, linking the garden to causes their loved one had supported. Even, as they mourned, they built something beautiful. In the following weeks, the garden slowly began to take shape. Trees were planted. Flowers bloomed. People came quietly to visit. Some prayed. Others simply sat in silence. Many left notes of love. Catherine often walked the path with the children. George would read the names on the memory stones. Charlotte picked flowers and placed them gently by the tree. Louis, always curious, asked many questions. Catherine answered with patience. This garden is a gift, she told them one day. Not just for us, but for everyone who needs a place to feel close to someone they miss. William, too, found comfort there. In the early mornings, before his royal duties began, he would sit on the bench under the tree, sometimes alone, sometimes with Catherine, always with a heart full of memory. One morning, Catherine joined him quietly, holding 2 cups of tea. I had a dream last night, she said softly. They were smiling. Peaceful. William looked at her and smiled gently. I believe they are. They sat in silence for a moment, listening to the birds and the sound of wind through the leaves. Later that day, the couple returned to their public duties. It was a charity event for children in need, one their loved one had cared deeply about. Catherine knelt beside a small girl who had recently lost her own father. The child clung to her tightly. Catherine didn't let go. I know it hurts, she whispered to the child. But love stays with us, always. William stood beside a boy who asked how he could be brave after losing someone. William knelt down, looking into the boy's eyes. Being brave doesn't mean not crying, he said. It means carrying the love forward. As they left the event, the couple looked at each other with quiet strength. They had grieved, they had broken, but they had also rebuilt. Not by forgetting, but by remembering with purpose. That evening, back at Kensington Palace, the children ran through the halls, their laughter echoing like music. Catherine and William watched them, standing hand in hand. Life was moving forward again, carefully, softly, but with hope. In their private sitting room, Catherine lit a candle near the framed photograph of the one they had lost. William stood beside her. No words were needed. Their eyes said everything. They had walked through the hardest days, together. And though sorrow would return from time to time, they knew they had each other. They knew their love was strong, and they knew their memories were safe, not just in their minds, but in the garden that would bloom forever. Grief had changed them, but love had carried them, and would continue to do so always.